Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of the Cultured Pull List. In this week's episode, we are covering Daredevil and Elektra, the Red Fist Saga, Part 1. This is the tail end of Chip Zdarsky's run on the character of Daredevil. So, without further ado, let's get into it. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of the Cultured Pull List. As stated at the beginning, we are going to be covering the first half of the Daredevil and Elektra, the Red Fist Saga. So, the Red Fist Saga is like a 14 issue run. It was actually first, it was actually like published under just the name Daredevil. But
Yeah.
for some reason, I guess when they put it in like trade paperback form, they called it Daredevil and Elektra. But yeah, so it's 14 issues, so we just split it down the middle. We're gonna cover the first 7 issues this episode and the next 7 next episode. But before we get into Daredevil, I had this one bit of comic news I wanted to talk about. So apparently the newer Batman comic run is being accused of using AI art
Oh, really?
in their comics. So yeah, so this is like actually funnily enough, this new Batman run is written by Chip Zdarsky as well. But
Mm.
so there's this guy called James Leach. He's apparently an author, and he said on Twitter, like he was, I guess, going through the current Batman run, and he said on Twitter, or I guess X, now that I've read all the issues of Batman, that I think something Sorrentino. I'm trying to remember. I think it's like Andreas Sorrentino. He's an artist. Let's see. Yeah, Andreas Sorrentino. Yeah, he's a comic book artist, and yeah. So he says now that I've read all the issues of the Batman that Andrea Sorrentino contributed to, I feel like there's a pretty strong case that AI art is being used. I'd love to be wrong about this, especially as the run has been so great, but it's hard to avoid. And then he explains all the reasons, and like I'm not super familiar with AI art or like how to point it out, but I guess he was saying that like some of the telltale signs are like the hands don't look quite right, and
Mhm.
the nipples on like the Joker's chest are kind of in weird positions. And he also pointed out that some of the resolution is like inconsistent with the
Mm.
rest of like the panel, like the painted like the backgrounds and the text bubbles are really clear, but then the actual like main art of it is low res. And he had a
Mhm.
few other reasons, but basically like he believed it was, that it's AI art, and some people online were agreeing, and even so like the what cbr.com posted an article about it.
Mm.
And there has been no like official word from DC or from Andrea Sorrentino, and he has been known to like trace like actual pictures for his art in the past.
Okay.
But he's never been known to like use AI.
Right.
And I mean, like I said, I'm not really an expert on this. It's kind of hard to tell if it is or if it isn't. I think another big thing was that there were just some weird models. Like there was this one scene where it showed Joker like hyper jacked and like wearing ripped jeans for no reason.
Mm.
Kind of making it seem like it was like an edited AI prompt or something.
Right.
But I mean, if it is AI art, it's I wonder if DC, like, knew and just printed it and didn't,
Yeah.
say, or if Andreas Sorrentino, like, submitted AI art as, like, his own, original
Mhm.
work. But that's if it is AI art, it's like there's been no official word either way, and this is just one dude on X,
Right,
saying this,
right,
and a few people agreeing with them. So it's hard to tell. But if it is A art, I mean, it's a bit of a bummer, I guess, because like those panels in the
right.
are in that book, I did really enjoy because it does have like
Mhm.
this eerie, creepy, like horror-esque vibe to it, which I thought was cool. And
Right.
it was upset, like it is unsettling, kind of like a lot of AI art can be. But I kind of assumed that was the point of the art because it's already kind of creepy. So I don't
Mhm.
know. But I just kind of wanted to bring that up. I thought that was interesting, and I'm definitely gonna keep my eyes open for
Yeah.
any further developments with that. But yeah, so enough about that. Let's get into our book here. So, first off, I kind of want to give some context to this story because it does come at the tail end of a longer Daredevil arc, and a lot of stuff had happened at this point. So, like, first off, Elektra and Stick, through like their fight against the Hand, found an ancient book that told of a ancient kind of counterpart to the Hand, called the Fist, that was supposed to like rise against the Hand and stop them. And but Daredevil in New York City, he thwarts a liquor store robbery, but during the fight he accidentally kills this guy named Leo.
Mhm.
uh, and he eventually gets prosecuted for it and the prosecutor's Robert Goldman, his old college friend. And in the end, Matt ends up striking a plea deal to like second degree manslaughter. But he strikes a deal with the prosecutor to keep his identity secret in prison. Like, yes, he's able to like wear a mask, and everyone just knows it's Daredevil, not Matt Murdock. So
Mhm.
Elektra, she goes to find Matt because the Fist needs a king and a queen to like to lead it according to the book she and Stick found. But Daredevil isn't convinced to join at first. But um, while he's in prison, Elektra ends up making her own, like kind of donning the moniker of Daredevil to
Yeah.
protect Hell's Kitchen while he's in prison. And she does this to kind of to earn Matt's trust, which she eventually does. And once Matt serves his sentence, he and Elektra make plans to go off and form the Fist. um, and they also to take down Kingpin, who was the mayor at the time. And during that whole thing, Kingpin finds Matt Murdock's twin brother, Mike Murdock, and kills him, thinking that he's Matt. And that is pretty much everything that you kind of should know before we get into this. So yeah, let's get into the book. So, this book, Daredevil and Elektra, the Red, it's actually like the first seven issues. These were written by Chip Zdarsky with art by Marco Cicchetto and Raphael De La Torre. The colorist was Matthew Wilson, and the letterer was VC's Clayton Cowles. And these issues were released between July 2022 and January 2023. So, relatively new issues. All right. So, the story starts out. We see this mysterious guy in a trench coat walking around, kind of having this voiceover narration talking about how like he hears this voice that tells him to do these things, and then other things happen, and we see an example of that where he just drops a like a penny or something from his pocket, and it starts or like a marble, and it starts this whole chain reaction that causes an accident. And he says like this voice in his head tells him to do things, and he thinks it's part of like some divine plan he doesn't understand. So next we see Matt Murdock talking to the Kingpin's son, Butch Ferris, who has taken over Kingpin's operations now that Kingpin is in prison. And Matt is posing as his twin, Mike Murdock, going undercover to kind of get close to Butch Ferris. And he basically warns Butch that if he steps out of line, and starts doing a bunch of criminal stuff like his dad did, that he's going to stop him. And Butch is like, "What?" And then Daredevil puts on his costume, and he and his Spider-Man shows up, and they both he kind of threaten him or be like, hey, you better not step out of line and start doing criminal stuff or we'll come back and stop you. So next, Daredevil changes into the rest of his outfit, and he and Spider-Man talk a little bit. And at this point, nobody knows that Matt Murdock is Daredevil, because actually the Purple Man's children erased it from everyone's mind, apparently. But
Mm.
that includes Spider-Man. So Matt reveals his identity to Spider-Man, because they're friends, and Peter's like, "Wow, I feel like I knew that." Like, yeah, a bunch of memories that were erased flood back into his head. But then Daredevil and Spider-Man go around, just kind of taking out all of the big crime bosses in the city. And Daredevil's doing this because he's kind of trying to clean things up as best he can before he leaves to form the Fist with Elektra. Then we see Mysterious Trenchcoat Guy again, and he's in this coffee shop, and he delays this guy back here with the tie, and that's a little more important later. But and his voiceover is still going on in his head and talking about the voice. So next we see the guy from the coffee shop. He bumps into this guy who's has a plan to use a gun to murder his boss, but instead he ends up turning the gun on this guy who came out of the coffee shop because he tells the guy with the gun to watch where he's going, you loser. And Matt is swinging by because he's planning on saying goodbye to his ex before he leaves, but he ends up stopping in the middle to stop the guy with the gun, but he's not able to save the guy who was shot. So then Matt leaves the scene because he can't really do anything, and he goes to the train station to see his ex Kirsten. And while there, we see the trench coat guy pop up, who turns out to be Robert Goldman, who I talked about earlier. Matt and Foggy's old fellow classmate at college, and um, Goldman starts like saying all this weird stuff, like saying that he's glad he can finally reveal himself and that Kirsten is going to die. And Matt's pretty confused, but the train she was on ends up blowing up right as Goldman says that. And Matt can, for some reason, he can see Goldman, like he's radiating with energy, and he can see him, even without having his sight. So then we see Elektra off on some island. She has gone ahead to start the Fist and recruit some people. I think they're in this area that's kind of like in the middle of a few different countries, including Russia. And she and Stick talk a little bit, but then they're accosted by some Russian soldiers, which they quickly defeat. But then Stick kind of starts lecturing Elektra, saying that she and Matt don't know what they're getting into, and um, you know the prophecy talks about, or the prophecy in the ancient Fist book says that one of the king or queen has to die at the end to defeat the hand, and Elektra is planning on that being her.
Mm.
But she and Stick fight a little bit because Stick's being a douche, and Elektra basically tells him like, you know, you may be my old master, but I'm in charge. Me and Matt are in charge, so get in line or screw off. Then we cut back to Matt, who is upset about Kirsten's train exploding, and Goldman explains that he's the one that caused it because the voice told him to talk to this guy he was on the subway with, and told the guy to go like look up how to build a bomb. And I guess the guy was kind of nuts, and he ended up building the bomb and planting it on the train. So then Goldie just kind of like leaps off the train platform and runs away, but Matt goes after him. But then another train explosion happens, I guess, and the train falls off the tracks, off the bridge, and buries Matt in a bunch of rubble. And then Goldman shows up and just kind of keeps blabbing on about, like, the voices and everything. And he also talks about how he's had this gift with the voice for as long as he can remember, and he saw, he had it back when he was at college with Matt and Foggy, and I guess at some point he saw Matt as some like angel devil hybrid celestial being, I guess, and he knew like, oh, his purpose in life was to um make all these things happen to Matt, to turn Matt into a better hero, and that included Kirsten dying. And apparently, he also kind of caused the death of Elektra's father, because at one point when they were in college, Elektra and her father were kidnapped, and Matt went to go save them. But during the ordeal, somebody shouted to the police that the kidnappers have a gun, and that caused them to open fire and shoot Elektra's dad. And it turns out the person who said that was Goldman. So then some civilians show up and scare Goldman off and pick the rubble up off of Matt. And he then goes and pursues Goldman some more to a construction site. And he ends up like beating the crap out of him and saying, like, why the hell did you kill Kirsten? And Goldman goes on to explain that he's basically kind of set into motion a bunch of events that happen throughout Daredevil's life. And we see this cool
Mm.
montage of different periods of Daredevil's life. And there's a few different guest artists
Yeah.
that come in, like the actual artists who did the art of like the whatever point in the comics that they're talking about.
Mm.
Um, so I'm trying to remember this guy's name is. I'll just put it on the screen when I edit this. And then there's John Romita Jr.
Yeah.
and another guy, I forget, but this is during like the Mayor Fisk storyline.
Mm.
But yeah, so that doesn't sit well with Matt, and he just starts slapping Goldman around even more. And then there's this interesting conversation. Goldman talks about how they used to have like debates about the existence of God and like Matt's point of view, and like um omnipotence and predestination and all this stuff. It's kind of an interesting little
Mhm.
conversation there. But then Goldman ends up just jumping off the unfinished building and kind of disappears. Matt isn't able to find him, but as he's falling, he reveals that Kirsten's actually alive. She didn't get on the train, so Matt goes back to the train station and he gives Kirsten a kiss goodbye. And next we see Goldman turn himself in at the police station, saying that he is the one responsible for the train explosion. So next issue starts with Matt trying to recruit this cop named Cole, and he's trying to get him to join the Fist, saying it's, it'll give him a bigger purpose, and that the justice system is corrupt, and like, he's not really doing much good staying in the system as part of the system. And Matt tells him to think about it, but with his heightened senses, he can tell that Cole's already decided to go with him. Next, Daredevil tries to go and recruit Luke Cage, who is the current mayor, now to trying to clean up after the mess that Fisk left. But Luke Cage says, like, yeah, he's got way too much on his plate to just go and join the Fist. And he says he has a meeting to go to with the Stromwinds, who are this a couple of billionaires, psychos that Daredevil's had dealings with in the past. So Daredevil follows Luke to his meeting, and the Strom ones basically say that like they're gonna do whatever they want, and they're so powerful that Luke can't do anything to stop them, and that he basically works for them now. And Luke tells him that no, that's quite the opposite. That he's gonna do everything he can to do what's best for this city, including standing up to them. But and Daredevil is outside. He had broken into the building and he heard the whole thing. But unfortunately, he is found out by the guards of the building and he has to fight his way out of the building. And as he's leaving, he's attacked by Aka, who is kind of like the leader of the hand, but kind of behind the scenes. And she's also Elektra's old master. But she and Daredevil fight for a bit, and she is able to use like this weird nerve pinch thing to um, immobilize Daredevil. And she explains that, like, there's really no use in fighting us. You're gonna fail, and that the hand has a new fist or a new like enforcer, basically, and it's the Punisher, Frank Castle. And then she just leaves him with that information, and Daredevil is eventually able to move again, and he goes to Foggy's apartment, and his house and collapses on the front steps, and he tells Foggy that he's going to need to take him with him because during this conversation, Aka also threatened Matt's friends and family. So next we see Matt going on. He's on the helicopter going to the island that he and Elektra had picked out, and or I don't remember if it's an island, but it's like a big mountain or whatever. But where they're building their base, and Foggy and Cole are on the helicopter with him. And once they arrive, he's greeted by Elektra and Stick, who he didn't realize was going to be there. But so Matt's not super happy about Stick being there. And apparently, Elektra had recruited a bunch of ex-hand assassins, as well as Doc Samson, who's now known as Doc Sasquatch. And next, Elektra, Daredevil, and Stick are kind of talking about the next steps and what the ancient Fist book tells them to do. And apparently, they have to do this ancient ritual to reignite or resurrect the hand. And part of it includes getting married to be like the official king and queen of the Fist. Um, then we see Cole getting settled in his new apartment, and this one assassin guy comes and kind of gives him a hard time because he says he stinks of regular people and that he doesn't belong there. So next we see Daredevil and Elektra all suited up, and they have to go perform the ritual, which includes like climbing to the top of the surrounding mountainside. And at the top, or wherever close to the top, they have to go into this cave and fight all the undead souls of the hand, basically. And once they defeat them, the ritual is complete, and the fist will be resurrected. And during this fight, we also see Cole training, and during the training, he is kind of challenged by that assassin dude, and they fight. But Cole's able to beat him, as well as Elektra and Daredevil are able to defeat all the undead hand creatures. And once they're finished, Stick shows up and is like, "I now pronounce you man and wife and king and queen of the Fist. Hooray!" And that is how that half ends.
So it opens up with Doc Sasquatch talking to Daredevil about. I think that there was a time jump because he mentions it being months since they started.
Yeah.
And since the ritual, they all have additional powers. The usual strength, speed, agility, that sort of thing. And then it also affects Daredevil's like perception. Like he can like see. Well, his normal senses are heightened as well, more than they normally were. And then he can also like perceive like emotions and stuff as well. And then Elektra and Stick are talking, and the book is like now writing itself. And before they couldn't read it, but now they can because they after the ceremony they can read it. So then Daredevil has like this monologue on the cliff with no, I think that's later. So they go to the raft to pick up more recruits. They're going to break into the raft and get out some supervillains and try to like reform them. So there's this scene where they break in, and they go over the roster more later, but Agony, the Bullet, and Fancy Dan, I think his name was,
Yeah, I think so.
are some of the ones that they break out. And then U.S. Agent is there, and this is something that happens a lot throughout the second half, is it kind of flashes between two different things back and forth. And so it flashes back. This incident flashes back between, well, not flashes back, but it jumps between two things happening at the same time. Elektra, as she's bringing the escapees onto a airplane, and then Daredevil is fighting John Walker. And this is what I was talking about earlier, how he can kind of like perceive more things than he normally would, because he turned the lights off in the hallway, and so John is pretty much just, you know, blinded literally, and the Daredevil has the advantage because he can like kind of like has a heightened perception of things. So he beats up US Agent and takes his shield, and then he breaks out Goldie, who is in a Hannibal Lecter style cell.
Yeah, that's true. I didn't think about that.
I mean, it's very clearly inspired by Silence of the Lambs. I think. I don't
Yeah,
think it's pretty obvious.
yeah.
And then they escape, and the final sequence in this scene is through like a video monitor, and Iron Man and Captain America are watching, and they're like, "We have to stop Daredevil," because they don't know what's happening. They just see this, and then there's another thing that happens later on that they don't know the context for it, and so they're like, "We need to stop these people."
Hmm.
Anyway, so the villains they broke out were Speed Demon, Bullet, Fancy Dan, the Stilt Man, the Wrecker, Doctor Stegan, I think,
Hmm.
Agony, and then this is Doctor Sasquatch, who's like the therapist guy, and then uh, Agony breaks. She gets upset and starts fighting Doctor Sasquatch, and then this is another one of those sequences where it jumps back and forth. We have Elektra, who is, oh well, so back here where the book was writing itself, they mentioned that the Fist is killing world leaders and replacing them with
You
like
mean the hand?
the hand. Yeah, right. I mean, the Fist in the hand is very similar name. It's
Yeah,
confusing.
I know. Yeah, it is. It's yeah.
The hand is replacing world leaders with like with like puppets, and so they can kind of manipulate them. So Elektra is going to the UN to check on the U.S. president while Daredevil is talking to Bullet. He kind of talks about like the big theme of this book is kind of talking about how like Daredevil's kind of disillusioned with the law, and kind of taking it into his own hands, but not the way you might think. He sort of has this rehabilitative state of mind where he's taking these former villains and trying to through like therapy, as we've seen, and other methods trying to rehabilitate them into functioning members of society. And then Iron Man swings by and he sees that Elektra is in the president's hotel room, and they have a little scuffle. But she's able to defeat him with a sword that can seemingly penetrate anything. So she stops him, and then we see that the president has been compromised, and he kind of just jumps off the building and presumably dies. I don't know. And then we have, this is Cole and Fancy Dan are talking, and then Dan talks about how the reason why they call him Fancy Dan is because he learned like Taekwondo, and like the more like judo, the more like artistic, for lack of a better term, fighting styles, where everyone else was kind of just like more rough and tumble, and so that's why they called him Fancy Dan. Yeah, and then Goldie and Matt meet on the same hill, the same cliff that he was on earlier, and they're talking about like how between the book that's writing itself and all these prophecies, and then the voice of God that's seemingly talking to Goldie, that there's not a lot of room for Matt's own free Matt's own free will. And then right as the president kind of poofs into a puff of smoke, he talks about how there's going to be a battle on the fields of Yushahara, I guess. I don't know. And because Elektra used to be part of the hand, and Bob, now she's not, so Bell's a traitor and all that. And then we flash back to Frank Castle, who is revealed at this point is the I think he's like the leader of the hand. And
Yeah, it's kind of interesting because the hand calls him their fist, like the fist of the hand,
uh
and then there's the fist. Yeah, it's a lot of the same words.
exactly. Um so then so the next issue starts with Daredevil talking to Elektra about getting caught on camera, presumably killing the president, and
Mhm.
that's not a great look. And then most of this issues takes place in North Carolina, where Matt and a group of the reformed villains are at a building that is has been bought out by a Castle Max, like a management place, and they're trying to tear down the building. And so they, instead of just like um, evicting all the residents like a normal way, they made up some stupid rules that they violated, and so they're trying to kick them out like that. And so the police are there, and they're trying to get him out. And through the scuffle, there's a child who runs up on top of the building and falls off, but then Mr. Stilts catches her because he has stilts in his legs. Um, and then the police they have a fight, and the police run away, and then Matt and his people go to the CEO of Castle Max, and they're basically like, "Yeah, don't do this, or there's going to be problems." And as they leave, Bullet tells Matt that he would rather the best way to reform him and break the cycle, so to speak, would be to just have him be with his son. And Matt's like, that makes sense. So he lets him go. And then we come back to the island where Elektra is training Agony, and the book is writing itself now, and we can see that uh, Matt can now read the book through his extra perceptions. Um, and then this part of the story ends with Bullet in Japan, where him and his son get kidnapped, and now Frank Castle has both of them held captive with the Fist.
So,
Mhm.
Daredevil and Elektra, the Red Fist Saga. I'm assuming this is the first time you read any of these.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Yeah. So I mean, obviously, I had collected most of them when
Hmm.
they came out. I had I think I started in like issue like 8, and then I went back and like bought the others. So I'd never actually read it, you know,
Mm.
um the way it's supposed to be read, I guess. So it was kind of nice to go back and
Hmm.
and I had never read some of the middle issues. Um
Okay.
so I kind of read this like very incomplete, like towards
Mm.
the end, the beginning, like the end, and then like I missed some of it. So, but yeah, what did you think of this story? The first half of this story.
Yeah, I liked it for the most part. I think I was surprised when I started reading it. I was surprised that the art wasn't by John Romita Jr. because it's very much reminiscent of his
Hmm.
style, I think.
Hmm.
Um, yeah, I felt like there was. See, I mean, I haven't finished this story, so maybe this isn't the case. But there's a lot of instances in this that they released this first part that feel kind of filler esque.
Hmm.
I mean, they might come back later. I don't know, but at this point, it kind of feels like they're stretching some things out a little bit. I don't know. But
Hmm.
overall, I enjoyed it.
Yeah, I will say, having read pretty much all of it at this point, the second half is better.
Mhm.
Like more happy. Yeah, like a lot of this first half is set up, I
Yeah.
guess, and then I don't really remember if all of it like pays off in the end or not.
Mhm.
But like a lot more happens in the second
Yeah.
half. But like the whole thing with like the Avengers,
Mm.
trying to stop them, and then like the war with the hand, like all that is obviously, that's in the second half. But
Mhm.
yeah, I really I mean, in the disjointed order that I read this originally, this really like got me into Chip Zdarsky's work.
Mm.
um
Yeah.
I really like his take on Daredevil. I think
Yeah.
just in general, I think Daredevil is a really interesting character. He's sort of like Batman, but
Mm.
in a way, but I feel like he's a more interesting version of Batman in a way.
Okay.
'Cause I feel like with Batman, at least the way he's written a lot, he's written very like perfect, and like he always knows what to do, and
Mm.
he's always this. Whereas with Daredevil, he feels more, I guess, authentic to me, because he feels like like an actual guy trying to,
Yeah.
do the right thing, but he's very conflicted a lot. I mean, just the fact that he's a lawyer and a vigilante, he's very conflicted. So I feel
Mm.
like he's just a very conflicted character, and he doesn't always do the right thing, even though he tries. And I think this story especially shows how like conflicted he is in a lot of ways, and how he's like trying to be in control but isn't quite. And like this whole story in and of itself, you'll see later, like kind of brings Daredevil to kind of like the brink of everything. And kind of makes him question everything he's been doing. And I feel like this first half kind of starts him on this path of kind of like he's trying to do the right thing, but he's also getting more and more radical and almost like
Mm.
becoming like in a way almost like a cult, you know.
Yeah,
Even
exactly. Yeah.
though they're trying to do the right thing and stop the hand, and then he's trying to reform these criminals. He's still kind of like compromising a lot of what he believes
Mm.
in, you know. And I find that interesting because it's part of the story. You know, it's not just like, oh, we're just gonna he we're just gonna throw away everything we know about Daredevil. It's more like, you know, this is specifically happening, and this isn't the first time that this has kind of happened with Daredevil. Like the whole Shadowland arc in like the early
Mhm.
2000s was a big thing because he became the leader of the Hand and like took over a huge portion of New York City. But the thing with
Mm.
that is like he was being like mind controlled by the Hand or something. And
Mhm.
this is more like his own doing. Um,
Right.
but like you said, like there is a bit of filler, especially like that one part where they go to the like save the people in that building. I'm not really
Mhm.
I don't remember if that really comes back later at all. I feel like it was just sort of a way to drop off Bullet like back in the States or whatever. Um,
Mm. Yeah.
but I will say I do really like this whole storyline, and this goes hand in hand with the current Punisher run at the time as well.
Mhm.
And I find them both really interesting because I feel like they're both doing something like new with the
Right.
characters, which I feel like after that in comics where the characters just kind of stagnate and do the same thing over and over.
Mhm.
I think
Mhm.
the best part about this and this, you know, the latest Punisher run is that they take these characters and put them in like extremely different situations than normal, you know? Um,
Yeah, and, like, the thing with that is that you kinda mentioned earlier is that you gotta, like, still keep it consistent with who they are as
mhm.
characters, but, like, take them in a new direction because you don't wanna get stagnant, so there's, like, that
Yeah.
line that I think it says really well.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. But yeah, the second half is more interesting, I'd say. But
Mhm.
this first half, I think, is a pretty good setup for what comes later. But yeah, so any other thoughts you had on this?
No, I think we pretty much covered it.
Yeah, yeah. Oh yeah,
Yeah.
you mentioned the art, and yeah, I do really like the art in this, and I thought the guest artists were kind of cool, having like
Yeah, for
the
sure.
different artists from the different periods in their Daredevil comics. That was fun. Um,
Mhm.
yeah, I will say the whole Goldie thing kind of comes out of nowhere. I don't remember if it actually like leads to anything. Yeah, you
Mhm.
know, because like I feel like, you know, it's important for like just like the first issue, and it's important for like retconning a lot of Daredevil stuff. You know, having
Mhm.
Goldie kind of pulling the strings a little bit, but I don't remember if it actually leads to anything. I guess we'll see next week.
Yeah.
But yeah, before we wrap things up on this week's episode, let's do our cultured picks. What do you have this week?
This week I picked up Titans number 9, and this is, it seems very much like a kind of a follow-up to Beast Wars, but also bringing us
Okay.
more closer to absolute power.
Hmm.
And I didn't read all of Beast Wars, but there's a big part in this is that Raven is not currently
Right.
actually Raven. She's an evil version, and like the real Raven's trapped inside of the crystal, and
Hmm.
she's slowly kind of like manipulating the Titans, like towards like the end of this issue. Well, I guess I'm not going to spoil anything, but yeah, she's manipulating the Titans, and she's successfully doing that at least at this point in the story. And so
Hmm.
yeah, it seems like it's building up things with Amanda Waller and Trigon, and
Right.
yeah.
So I know you said in the past, like you aren't a huge fan of the current Titans run. Is this
Mhm.
like an outlier for you, like better than most of the others, or did you just think it was like worthy of note?
Yeah, I mean, again, like much like Nightwing previously, I haven't read a lot
Mhm.
of Titans books. I mean, I read the first couple, and then this is issue 9. I haven't really read anything in between.
Ah, okay.
But yeah, I mean, it seems better than where I left off, and maybe I
Yeah.
took a break and it's more refreshing. I don't know, but yeah, it seems
Yeah.
like it was better than it was before.
Yeah. It feels like the first few issues seems like they're starting something, and then it sort of gets folded into the whole Beast Wars thing.
Mhm.
Like the whole like murder of Wally, and
Right.
him coming back in time, like that gets resolved kind of quickly with the whole Beast Wars thing. Yeah, so
Mhm.
but yeah, like it's been pretty good, but yeah, I wouldn't say it's been outstanding. The whole
Yeah,
Titans run, and then
exactly.
it sort of just became the Beast Wars thing. There hasn't been a whole lot before
Right.
or since, so I guess we'll see. But
Mhm.
my pick this week is I think it came out last week, but it's Ghost Rider Final Vengeance #1. And this story starts out with the spirit of vengeance. I forget its name, but it leaves Johnny Blaze because Johnny is doing too much heroic stuff. Because like the spirit of vengeance, is exactly that. It's a demon basically under Mephisto's
Mhm.
um, control, and I guess Mephisto got tired of Johnny Blaze using spirit for good all the time, so it leaves to find another host. And throughout the whole book, it's basically like hopping from body to body. Um, and it's drawn to like intense feelings of vengeance, I guess, and hatred. And it's really funny because like at the different parts, it just hops into like random things, and sometimes it even like possesses like a shark or something, or like
Mm.
it hops on like an airplane and possesses all the people in the airplane and turns the airplane into like like a hell version of the airplane.
That's
Um,
fun.
yeah, and then there's this one part where there's this it's kind of like I feel like I've heard like of this stuff like a lot in movies and TV, but there's this one woman whose like husband died, and his mom, the husband's mom, is trying to get custody of the kids from
Mm.
the mom, and like she plants drugs in her house and all these messed up things, and sends in child protective services. But then the spirit of vengeance possesses the mom, and she just like breathes fire on the grandma and just melts her face, which was pretty
Nice.
interesting. But at the very end, the ghost, the not the ghost, the spirit of vengeance finds a new host in the villain, the Hood, and
Mm.
I guess that's the new Ghost Rider for now. And like obviously he's not going to be as heroic as
Right.
Johnny Blaze. So I guess we'll see what happens where it goes from there. But I thought that was pretty cool.
Mhm.
And but yeah, that is our episode for this week. Thank you so much for joining us and for listening slash watching. If you'd like to support us on Patreon so we can bring you more content, you can check out the patreon.com/the cultured nerd and look for our show's specific tier, the cultured pull list. Thank you to all of the current supporters of the cultured nerd on Patreon: Wesley H, Mitch S, Connor Y, Anna M, Oscar B, Craig L, and Salib K. I have been your host, Michael Malillo, and my co-host has been Luke S. Our logo was designed by Jose Navarro, and our intro was designed by myself. Thank you again for joining us. Please be sure to like, subscribe, share, and comment. And if you'd like to follow the Cultured Nerd or the Cultured Pull List on social media, you can scan the QR code on the bottom left. And if you would like to check out Casual Experts, me and Luke's other brand, where we just talk about like all things nerdy and pop culture, you can scan the QR code on the bottom right. We'll see you next time.